Elijah Vue's mother, Katrina Bauer, and her boyfriend, Jesse Vang, both appear in Manitowoc County Court just a short time ago for preliminary hearings. It's also the first time we heard from Bauer's mother, who spoke out against her daughter's release from jail. Elijah was reported missing February 20th in Two Rivers, and we continue to share his photo. And authorities are asking to call the state tip line if you have any information that can help. 844-267-6648. Prosecutors filed amended charges against Katrina Bauer today, changing a felony charge to chronic neglect of a child. A misdemeanor count of neglecting a child was also added to her record. She's being held on a $15,000 cash bond. Jason Zimmerman was at the hearing and joining us live now in Manitowoc with this first alert update. Jason.
Tammy, preliminary hearings for both Bauer and Vang were adjourned until next week, but today Bauer's attorney did request a signature bond on behalf of her client, which was eventually denied by the judge, primarily because Bauer's residence is in Wisconsin Dells, which is too far from the Two Rivers area. We also heard today from Katrina Bauer's mother. She told the judge that her daughter severed ties with much of the family back in 2022 and could potentially flee because of the connection she has in other states, including Nevada. The mother also expressed her concern about Bauer not cooperating with law enforcement and opting to protect her boyfriend, Jesse Vang, at the peril of her own son, who's now been missing for more than 2 weeks. Here's a sample of a letter read by the prosecution, written by Bauer's mother.
Katrina routinely will blame anyone and everyone for what happens without taking responsibility for her actions. It goes without saying she is incapable of making appropriate judgments in everyday life, which is likely being available for future court dates and questioning.
Jesse Vang still does not have an attorney, but he is eligible for a public defender. He indicated today that he is also seeking a bail reduction. Afterwards, I spoke to some of the volunteers who are participating in the search for Elijah. I'll share some of their reaction from today's court hearing tonight at 4, 5, and 6 o'clock. Reporting live in Manitowoc, Jason Zimmerman, Action 2 News.